Proud.
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 The American way of life is based on people being proud of their country. One of the best places to experience this is in the capital area, in and around Washington, D.C. Join us in conversations with various government officials and everyday people on the street to explore the history and modern life in the U.S. What is the status of Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, within the U.S.? This not-so-easy question is answered by a congresswoman who is proud to represent this area in the national government.
I am Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. I am proud to represent the people who live in the nation's capital, and I am proud that I am a fourth-generation Washingtonian.
That's very nice. How did you get involved in working in politics or in then getting into Congress?
Well, I never intended to run for Congress. I was a tenured professor of law at Georgetown University Law School. I maintained my tenure because I teach one seminar every year. When the person who had held this office for 20 years decided to run for mayor, lots of folks who said, well, Eleanor, you are deeply involved in public policy. I had been the chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission under President Carter. I gave speeches about public policy all over the country and on the radio. So they said, why don't you run for Congress? I must say, it took some convincing because when you're a tenured professor, you don't think about leaving your tenure, and I haven't because I still teach, to do something else, and certainly not something as quixotic as run for public office. Washington, D.C., otherwise known as the District of Columbia, is a historic oddity. The framers of our Constitution wanted a special place beholden to no state for the capital of the United States. They did not entirely think through what would happen if lots of people began to live here. Would they have the right to vote for their own government? Would they have the right to be represented in the House and the Senate? So we have spent now over 200 years trying to figure that out, and frankly going back and forth. Sometimes the District of Columbia, the 500,000 people who live here now, have had no representation whatsoever in the House and have had no self-government. For 100 years, there was no self-government at all until 1974. The status of the residents of the District of Columbia, the capital of the United States, is still up in the air more than 200 years after the nation was founded.
And so what are you doing to try to make that status more stable or to give it some kind of a framework?
I spend a lot of time trying to increase the power and authority of the residents of the District of Columbia and of the government, trying to make more self-government occur, protecting the government we have in the District of Columbia from encroachment from the Congress itself, because there's a section of the Constitution, amazingly, which gives the Congress the power to do anything it wants to in terms of the government of the District of Columbia, to have a government or to have no government. Now, the residents of the District of Columbia have all of the rights under the Bill of Rights, but when it comes to self-government, or for that matter, representation in the Congress, I do not have full powers in the Congress. I have almost full powers. For example, I vote in committees, but I do not have the right to vote on the House floor. And the District of Columbia has no representation whatsoever in the Senate of the United States. In a real sense, this city is an orphan in the American constitutional system. I was a tenured professor of law at Georgetown University Law School.
A professor with tenure has the right to stay in his or her job permanently.
I had been the chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is a government agency which helps guarantee that people have fair chances for a job.
And certainly not something as quixotic as run for public office.
Quixotic, something that comes from Don Quixote, having good intentions but not practical.
The District of Columbia is a historic oddity.
Something that is an oddity is strange or unusual.
The status of the residents of the District of Columbia, the capital of the United States, is still up in the air.
Up in the air means that something has not been decided yet.
Protecting the government we have in the District of Columbia from encroachment.
Encroachment means that someone or something goes beyond its normal limits. How do Americans feel about the Vietnam War today? A visit to the memorial wall gives you some thoughts from both those who are proud to work there and tourists with special feelings.
Hello, my name is Kevin Leahy. I'm a Park Service Ranger for the National Park Service here in Washington, D.C. Behind me you'll see the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which was officially dedicated in November 11th, 1982. Right now on the wall, what's known as the wall, is 58,214 names. Majority of those individuals are known dead. There's about 1,100 which are still missing in action. When people come to the wall, I think it's for various reasons. One is to pay their respects to the men who gave their lives fighting in the war. The other reason is to heal any wounds that they might have, emotional wounds. So it makes me proud when people come down here to pay their respects and also to make an effort to heal themselves.
I'll tell her it's from you. It's from you. Go down underneath the red there. Where can I see it?
It was amazing to see that how many people have given their lives in the service to our country. It's very emotional to walk through there and to see that there were so many men and women that went before us and died in the line of duty.
Well, I have to admit, first of all, that I don't know personally any of the people whose names are on the memorial. But I am awestruck and a little overwhelmed when I look at the number of names there, because it reminds me that each name stands for a husband or a son or a father who lost their lives and who never came home. And that somebody somewhere has lost someone very dear and important to them, and probably still grieves even now.
Well, I've been here a number of times, and I come here a number of times for the strict reason that as an officer in the United States Army, I want to make sure that we all remember that we don't want to repeat this mistake again. So I come here and I bring my children, I bring my family, and I bring my relatives to try to understand that 58,000 service members died, and we want to make sure that we don't make the same mistake ever again.
I remember, since I was born in 1959, that my mother looking through the newspaper and noticing, because I'm 39, I was able to not get drafted for the war. And as it pleased my mom and myself, obviously, that I wasn't there and watching it on the evening news every day. Walking through here was a very sad experience for me, because I was old enough to know the protests were happening. Didn't exactly know why. Learned it as I got older. But it's just a sad thing that so many people died for nothing. And that is probably the saddest thing And I cried all the way through this, and I didn't know one person on that wall, but it's just the whole thing that happened to this country. And thank God we got through it, and hopefully it never happen again.
I think that it's a very solemn memorial, and that it's a shame that so many people had to die. And I think it evokes a lot of emotion for people, especially people who have relatives that died or were missing in action in Vietnam. And I think that it's a tragedy that it had to happen.
I've been planning on coming here since the opening of the memorial. I served in Vietnam, and I have several friends who never came home from Vietnam. So it's a really emotional experience for me, even after almost 35 years. I was there in 1963, in the very beginning of Vietnam. We actually started in Vietnam in 1959, after the French pulled out, with some special forces people, and then the war escalated into a major war for the United States.
Is there any special significance since it's almost the 4th of July?
No, I was here and attending a different conference in Baltimore, Maryland, and I thought I'd come down here today. I don't think I'll ever come back to the wall, though.
Pay their respects to the men who gave their lives fighting in the war.
To pay respects means to visit someone, often after their death, as a sign of respect.
But I am awestruck.
When you're awestruck, you're very surprised and suddenly filled with respect for something.
And probably still grieves even now.
Someone who grieves feels sorry for someone else after they've died.
I was able to not get drafted for the war.
When someone is drafted, they are ordered by the government to serve in the armed forces.
I think that it's a very solemn memorial.
Solemn is a word for serious or formal occasions.
I think it evokes a lot of emotion for people.
Evokes is a word that means feelings are brought into your heart or into your mind. Who are the Native Americans, or as they are usually called, the Indians? Gain some insights from a woman who is not only proud to be a Native American herself, but works in the federal government to protect their way of life.
I'm Elizabeth Loha Homer. I'm a member of the Osage Tribe of Oklahoma, and I'm the director of the Office of American Indian Trust here at the United States Department of the Interior. I wanted to begin by telling a little bit about myself. I'm a member of the Osage Tribe, as I said, which is about a 15,000 member tribe located in northeastern Oklahoma. The Osage Tribe is a reservation of about 1.6 million acres of rolling prairie lands. The primary economy of the tribe is oil and gas development. Recently, a preserve, a prairie park preserve, was established in the middle of the reservation, and we again have buffalo roaming the Osage prairie lands, so we're pretty happy about that. My name is Loha. That's my family name, my maiden name, and I wanted to share a story about that. My great-grandfather, his name was Olohawala, and when my grandfather went to boarding school when he was about 14 years old, they asked him his name, and he said that his name was Niwala, which is his family name. And the people at the boarding school didn't understand that. They said, no, your real name, your American name. And he said, well, my real name, my American name is Niwala. And they said, no, you have to have a real name. What's your father's name? And he said, well, my father's name is Olohawala. And they said, okay, all right, your name is going to be Loha, because that's what the person heard. The admissions officer heard at the school. So he says, okay, your name is Loha. Now you have to pick a real name, a first name. And being about 14 years old and having been educated prior to going to boarding school, he said that he wanted the name Henry because he had heard about that king in England who had 8 wives or 6 wives, and so he wanted to have that name, and his name became Henry Loha. And since that time, that's been our family name, and there's actually quite a few Lohas left in Osage County. A lot of people are very familiar with cultural issues. They know that tribes have ceremonies, and they know that there are celebrations, often known as powwows, and they know a lot about some of the more general images of Native Americans, but few people truly understand the legal status of American Indian tribes within the constitutional framework of the United States of America. So one of the things that I do here at the Office of American Indian Trust is to provide this kind of background so people can more easily understand how all of these concepts work together. So one of the questions that people often have is, well, what are Indian tribes? They are cultural groups. They are ethnic groupings of people. They are linguistic groupings of people. There are various types of cultures and religious beliefs. But importantly, you add to that character, those things, the fact that they are political entities. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's very simple. It means that tribes are governments. They have governmental authority and they have governmental responsibilities. They also have managerial responsibilities over their lands and natural resources. So taken together, what this means is that within the constitutional framework of the United States, we have a federal government, we have state governments, and we have tribal governments. And all three are interdependent upon one another, but none are the same. They're separate entities. Tribal people want to live in tribal communities, but they don't believe that being Indian necessarily means that you have to be poor or somehow have a lower standard of living than the rest of the people in the world. Tribal governments are working very hard to change these kinds of attitudes and to make members of their community feel proud to be from their communities, to have a sense that they can achieve their fullest human potential and still be a part of a tribal community with a long, long history of relationship, and to revive the culture and to make sure that there are opportunities within those communities so that 100 years from now, or 200 years from now, or 1,000 years from now, American Indians will still be who they are. A Prairie Park Preserve was established in the middle of the reservation.
A preserve is an area set up in nature to protect the wild animals that live there.
My name is Loha. That's my family name, my maiden name.
Maiden name is the term used for a woman's family name before she marries.
When my grandfather went to boarding school.
Boarding school is a school where students not only study but also live in the area.
The fact that they are political entities.
An entity is a unit or something with its own existence.
To revive the culture.
Revive is a word that means to bring something back to life that has died. What is the meaning of the Civil War to Americans today, almost 150 years later? Listen as two experts explain the background and importance of a war in which many proud people died for their beliefs.
Hello, I'm Brigadier General Jack Mountcastle. I serve as the Army's Chief of Military History. I'm happy to talk with you today here at Manassas, one of the battlefield parks in the United States that the Army frequently visits because it gives us an opportunity with today's soldiers and their leaders, young and old, to look at a place where Americans in other days led and died in support of ideas that they held very strongly.
Manassas is important to the Civil War in that two of the major battles that were fought in the Civil War were fought here, and literally next to each other. The first major battle of the Civil War was fought here on this ground. One of the probably most famous American generals of all time, Stonewall Jackson, received his nickname of Stonewall Jackson very close to the site where we're standing. Most people think it's where the statue that is behind me was located, but actually it was not right here, but close by. One of the generals in the Confederacy came up to Jackson and said, "Let's rally behind the Virginians. There stands Jackson like a stone wall." The nickname stuck with him. His name throughout the rest of his life, which was fairly short after that time, became Stonewall Jackson. The Civil War was a major event in American history. It's something that Americans have always been fascinated with. Some have been troubled with because of the amount of life that was lost in this war. There were about 640,000 Americans that were killed or died in the Civil War. And almost every war that the Americans have fought besides the Civil War would equal the number of deaths in the Civil War. So there are a lot of things that are important about the Civil War. We have a wonderful job because people come here and they want to learn about the Civil War. And so our job is to teach them about the Civil War, teach them about some of the issues that Americans fought over at that time. And we have a wonderful site here in that if you come to Manassas and you look almost anywhere around the battlefield, you see essentially what the ground looked like in 1861 and 1862. We're about 25 miles from Washington, D.C., but you feel like you're out in the country because there virtually is no development that you can see around the park. We have a lot of, many of the descendants of Civil War soldiers are very interested in finding out about their ancestors who fought in the Civil War. We have a number of people who come to the park here. We're able to show them on maps exactly where the regiment that their ancestors were in, where they fought. And so they can go out with maps on the field and they can actually see where this took place.
And I think one of the things that many Americans are proud of is that their ancestors, from wherever they may have come from, joined together in their new country to defend those ideals in which they had developed very strong feelings. We know that because of the huge number of German immigrants who came to this country in the 20 years before the American Civil War, that we had not just regiments, but whole divisions where German was the language spoken around the campfire. And the bands that played the regiments into action would have been perfectly at home in Potsdam. We also know that many Americans today see our Civil War as a defining point in our history, where two separate economic systems, one increasingly industrial in the Northeast, and in the Southeast, an agricultural system that was largely supported through the use of other human beings, Africans brought to this country in slavery, was maintained as an agricultural system. And these two systems conflicted intellectually and emotionally. And this was one of the major reasons that we had this Civil War. It was, yes, about economics, and yes, it was about politics too, but the issue of slavery was key and critical to this war.
Stonewall Jackson received his nickname Stonewall Jackson very close to the site where we're standing.
Nickname is an informal humorous name often given by friends.
Many of the descendants of Civil War soldiers
Descendants are the people who all have the same forefather and come after this person.
are very interested in finding out about their ancestors who fought in the Civil War.
Ancestors, on the other hand, are the family members before one's grandparents. On July 4th, the Americans celebrate how proud they are of their country on Independence Day.
I guess I don't have to extend a warm welcome to you, but I do want to welcome you to the National Archives and Records Administration celebration of the 4th of July. I'm John Carlin, the Archivist of the United States, and it's my opportunity at this point to introduce to you the Armed Services Color Guard, who will present the colors.